We're here this afternoon to make sure that the City of New York and the congressional leaders understand the importance of the New York City Housing Authority to the city. But what we're here today is to make sure that our work in NYCHA continues. We need a chairperson appointed to NYCHA so that we can begin the work in NYCHA. We have a commitment from our controller to do an audit of the agency, which he is going to begin. With that, we will find out how we can streamline our expenses at NYCHA so that the people who do the work, our members, can go and do the work efficiently. Also, our partners in the federal government, which is the New York delegation and Congress, will also have an idea of what kind of funding is needed for NYCHA and what the budget will be going into the future. With that, I will ask Congressman Meeks to speak, and after that, if we have anyone else who wants to speak, they can. If not, we'll take questions, and we thank you for coming out.
First, let me thank President Floyd for his tenacity in trying to make sure that the workers who are serving those individuals who live in public housing, to make sure that they have a decent place to live. I'm delighted to be with him and the workers that represent the Teamsters Local 237 and others that work hard in housing. You know, I'm a product of public housing. I lived and grew up in public housing. In fact, I lived there until I graduated college. And so I know of the relationship between workers and tenants and how that becomes tremendously important and why that connection must continue. And when you look at NYCHA, which is the first and the oldest public housing built in the United States of America, it was the standard bearer. It was what others looked up for. It was the hope, as it was for my parents, of a better tomorrow. And because we're now the oldest, it now means we need the most work. We need to be more dedicated than ever to fixing the structure, because we're also the largest, and putting the people and giving the resources to the hard workers so they can fix the buildings so that people have a decent place to live. So we've got to do a couple of things in Washington, and that's why I'm delighted to have joined my colleagues Carolyn Maloney and Jerry Nallen, Hakeem Jeffries, and Yvette Clark, the entire New York delegation, to say that we're going to focus on making sure that we get this right. We're going to look, now that sequestration is over, because of the omnibus bill that was passed, we got to go through all of the numbers. We know that HUD has received for housing a little bit of more money, but less than what the president had requested. But we've got to find out specifically how it affects the New York City Housing Authority. We'll be working closely with Scott Stringer, our new great comptroller, to make sure that we do what's right for the workers of NYCHA and the people that reside in NYCHA. And I know with our partners around us that's standing here, we're going to do that. Because that's what New York has always been. It's been about being in the forefront, not only for those that are the top 1%, but I do believe we are judged by those who have the least of these. And if we want to have a better tomorrow, we've got to make sure that people have good living conditions. And the only way that you can do that is have quality workers, many of whom come from public housing. And that's something that's left out. A lot of the workers that are members of these unions come from public housing. So we're going to make sure that they have jobs. And lastly, I just end on this. And part of the conversation that we had, which I think is tremendously important that we do, is to, again, to make sure that we are training our workforce. We know we've got dedicated workers, people who will work day and night to make a difference. We need to train them and give them the additional expertise in this new technological world that we live in, so that as the new jobs and reconstruction is done, they can do the work. And there's no need thereby to outsource that work to anybody else other than the hard workers that have been doing the job all along. So, Greg, I'm with you, the congressional delegation is with you, and we'll stay focused so that we can make sure that we're making life better for all New Yorkers.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak? If not, we'll take questions.
Questions from the press?
Greg, the reason for the audit, what was the basis for the reason why you decided to go forward with this audit?
The reason for the audit is that there's we believe there's a lot of waste in NYCHA. We believe the monies aren't being spent properly. We believe we can do things, meaning we can operate more efficiently. But in order to make that assessment, we need to know where the money was spent, how much money was spent, what money was spent, so that we can begin to assess how we can better spend the money that we have. Because we think we can operate on a budget that's given to us, but we need to know what the budget is, the real number, without the inflation of patronage, meaning outsourcing jobs to companies, contracts, like the contract that we saw with the payroll system, that city time, that was $1 billion in waste. If we have that in NYCHA, and we find $1 billion in waste, which I'm saying might not be $1 billion, even it's 500 million, 200 million. If our deficit is $90 million, if we find $200 million, we're $110 million in the red. I mean in the black. So we might have a surplus there, which means we could provide better services.